Good afternoon, beautiful people. Watching folks join in. I want to give some folks a minute or two. Um, Good afternoon. I'm Therese Nelson. Back at it again. This has been such a joyful experience collaborating with Afropunk. I'm representing Black food folks. We've been doing these conversations since May, and you all have been riding with us the whole time. So it's been so cool to bring you guys food-based conversations from folks who are doing such interesting and thoughtful and rooted work. Most of these folks are people I know and have known for many, many years, and folks that I'm so excited to bring to you guys and introduce you to. If you are unfamiliar, this week I have the honor of talking with Tanya Feilds. She has occupied many, many spaces in the food world, and her work is really intentional in terms of thinking about and loving on Black women, and sort of thinking about how to use food as this intersectional space for women to feel empowered and cared for. And so, yeah, let me see if I can find Tanya and we can bring her in. Let's see. I'll wait a second and see if I can find Tanya. But yeah, this is going to be a good one. Over the weeks, we brought you guys folks who occupy a lot of spaces. So the food justice work, policy, chefs, and Tanya seems to have found a home that traverses lots of different spaces. So super excited for this one. Let's see. Yeah, it's going to be good. She's very brilliant. Let us see. Hey. Hey, let's see. Good morning. Good afternoon.
It's morning.
I'm
That's the
so
wrong type of move for this, right? Wrong move.
No, it's perfect. You level set every space you occupy, so I'm gonna match your energy. I want to say thank you for taking the time. I know you have so much going on in your life. You are
Child. I
multiple fronts all the time.
Like, go in the room, mommy's getting on a call.
But I love it, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I feel like over the years we live so close to each other, and I feel like we are always sort of tangentially around one another, but I sort of follow your work pretty closely and just have admired you for so many years. So it's a good chance to get to chat with you about where you are now, because I feel like I feel like we've known each other for not quite a decade, but I feel like the first time I came,
it's been close.
Yeah. And I feel like at the early part, and I feel like we were all kind of starting our work sort of around the same time.
Right.
And I feel like over time your work has sort of evolved and shifted, but the focus has always sort of centrally been the same.
You're right.
And so I would love it if you could talk a little bit about the beginning, because there's such a particular origin story.
I only have coffee in here. I've had a little something in here.
I know it.
There's a lot of layers. Thank you for so much for having me. I just also want to tell the folks just how brilliant you are, how much I admire your work, how many times I tried to hire you for stuff, and sis be like, listen, girl, I got too much going on right now. And how I really look at you as an authority on Black foodways, right? You know, you are really part of I feel like a real premier group of astute folks who have such a layered and nuanced and critical understanding of Black foodways. And so you've taught me so much as I particularly do this work, because my work is very much rooted in the empowerment of Black women, girls, and what other folks call marginalized genders, right? Folks who present as feminine or encapsulate that feminine energy, who do not identify as male. And so, you know, that's really the lens through which I've done all of my work. And so when people are like, well, what do you do? I'm like, just existing for me as a Black woman is the work. If I had to put it on a CV, which I struggle with, God knows I need to update my CV. My assistant has been like, girl, why don't you have a current LinkedIn platform or page? And I'm like, because I already have too many manners of social media I'm trying to manage. So I am the founder and executive director of the Black Feminist Project, which is an organization that cultivates radical joy. Where our tagline is what we like to say, where, you know, resistance and radical joy meet. So we look at the intersections of food justice and reproductive justice, particularly as it relates to Black women, girls, and children. And sorry, this is the new world we live in. So that's normal, y'all.
Yeah.
Anyways, and so what that entails, the Black Feminist Project, we have a 5,400 square foot lot that we have turned into an urban farm. And we are very specific about using the word farm and not community garden. We do not have a community garden model. And so we produce hundreds and hundreds of pounds of food. Some rich white man said to me the other day when I told him how much food we grew, he was like, oh, that's nothing. And I was like, you have no child, listen, you have no idea what this space means for people in our community. Particularly, this lot exists, this farm exists on a dead end street in one of the poorest congressional districts in the country. And we vacillate between either one of the poorest or the poorest. It all depends on the year. Yes, sweetheart. Can you ask your sister? She'll do it for you. Thank you. And we do a dinner series. Whatever y'all are doing, can y'all do it from over here? Because I'm literally live right now.
Sorry.
We have a dinner series that is called Sis Do You. And we've pivoted to the digital platform now. And that is an empowerment series for teen girls and women and femmes ages 14 to 30. When we were doing face-to-face dinners, we did a money raffle, because I really stand 10 toes down in this idea that if you are looking for folks, particularly Black women and femmes who we know really are the anchors.
Yeah, say that.
And our labor consistently are exploited, stolen, or mined. You cannot get folks to invest in long-term social justice movements if you do not meet people's short-term needs. And so for us, that is always the model that we look at. How do we do direct services while also loving up, nurturing folks, and giving them enough faith, love, and radical joy to root themselves into, that they can armor themselves with that to go forward to dismantle these systems. So we do part of that through our Sis Do You series. Now we do it digitally, and we're looking at what it means to come back as a face-to-face dinner series, most likely in 2021. Child,
Right.
Corona in 2020. Everybody should have just had off. We should have all just taken 2020 off. So we're looking at that, but right now we're still digital. We are creating partnerships with organizations like Bronx Rebirth, which is a doula collective. We just gave them some coins because they are out here in these streets delivering childcare products to mothers who are in need. They are, for us, it's all about, when we look at direct services, a lot of times, a lot of these systems that are supposed to be helping people mirror the white supremacist and racist and sexist systems from which they were born, and they create more obstacles. And so we want to partner with folks, and we want to create programming that creates less barriers, right? So when we talk about, oh, poor people, poor Black folks don't value healthy eating, that's bullshit. Can I say bullshit?
Yes, you can. Because that's what it is.
That's what it is. It's bullshit, right? We know this bullshit because it's not that we don't value it. We literally taught Americans how to eat, right? It is Black who have held up the culinary and food system in this country. We literally built the agricultural system on our backs, us and indigenous folks. And what happens is that one of many barriers for folks, like we see farmers markets come in to communities, we see health bucks come into communities, we see all of these other incentives. But what happens is it creates more barriers. You want to be running people down trying to get their health metrics so that you can continue to give funding by saying that we fed 300 people and 25 of them dropped their blood pressure and all this other kind of stuff. Poor folks ain't got time for that, right? Because it is in direct conflict of this other narrative that we hear, which is poor folks are lazy. No, poor folks work hard. We work harder than anybody else. And so if I am in a work fair program, if I work, my kids are going to school and I'm trying to remote learn and teach these little crumb snatchers and still get to my job as an essential worker and still come home and get to the grocery store, many of which have started closing up 2 and 3 hours earlier since the beginning of this pandemic. I don't have time to be jumping through hoops. I need what I need when I need it. And if you don't have a better alternative, well, then I'm going to make whatever I have access to work. So for us, when we are creating these programs, for us, it's like, not only do we make these things free, low cost, slide and scale, but how the hell do we make it easy? Like, how do I take my lived experience as a woman who has a staff of 7, but still herself takes such a small salary that I have to feed my kids on a food stamp budget, that I still live in.
Time, hold on. Okay.
So so there's that piece of that on outside of the nonprofit side, is that I've created a lifestyle brand, a very inconsistent lifestyle brand, because I'm also just in the business of like trying to raise 6 children in a hard scrabble, resilient community and take care of my staff. Mama Tanya's Kitchen. I'm online. I'm on Patreon. I am basically like, how do we get big, Black, dark-skinned women from the hood in the lifestyle genre to represent a market that we know is there, but is never, ever acknowledged?
Ever. Because I think these brands don't, that's a whole other conversation. Because it's this thing about what the mainstream space sees as valuable, who they see as valuable, who they see as a consumer. Now realizing that that aspirational aspect of the food world is fictitious in a lot of ways, but also is something that it sort of transports you in the way in which you can see yourself, and sort of to have your kitchen set up and to be able to cook is like some of the lowest entry points, like financially, right? You can't maybe afford to go on this big vacation, but you can cook Morocco. You can cook, you can cook, just that's. I love Mama Tanya's Kitchen. I want to circle back to it in a minute, but this something I've always been fascinated by in your work, because you talked about the South Bronx a little bit, and you talked a little bit about like sort of the idea of being impactful where you are, right? The community that you occupy, doing the work that sort of is most impactful in the space you are. And I think sometimes people's imaginations on urban communities, like I'm from North New Jersey, like I live in Harlem. You grew up in the same place, but there seems to be this imagination on the South Bronx specifically in this kind of microcosmic way where we sort of have all of the worst part, like income, health disparities, all these elements. And so I think people's imagination on the South Bronx becomes this thing where you can immediately marginalize it in this really weird way. But somebody was mentioning about like issues happening in South Africa. I feel like the global Black experience is similar, right? Like this, it just feels sometimes like the work you do in the South Bronx should absolutely be applicable to all these other communities. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what building the kind of mission-based work you do takes, because I don't think we have enough understanding of what it really takes to stand in those spaces with very little support and to sort of do work that is essentially subverting the systems that exist to sort of help people either by city, because I mean you work in concert with the city in some ways, right? Your farm space is in concert, so you sort of have to find a way to navigate city-based services, sort of government-based services, but the work you do is radical in a way it sort of subverts those spaces at the same time. So I'm wondering what that looks like, and if you could talk a little bit about the process, because I think we don't have a big enough appreciation, so wide enough appreciation for how hard that work is, and also how many fronts you have to kind of
So what's so
successfully navigate.
this morning as I was coming back from Dunkin' Donuts, here we are talking about food justice and me and my little fake Dunkin' Donuts. Listen, like what we got. They put a little fancy hoity coffee shop up here that's black owned or Latin owned. My black ass will go and check it out and support it. All we got is Dunkin' Donuts. So I went to Dunkin' Donuts to get my morning coffee because I didn't, my kitchen is a mess. I've been renovating my kitchen. And I'll show it to y'all if y'all want to see it. I'm very proud. It's a work in progress. Anyways, I went to Dunkin' Donuts and I was walking up the street listening to my Afro beats in my headphones. This woman, she's talking to me, but I guess she's not realizing I have headphones in, so I can just see her mouth moving. And so I take the headphones out, and as a true New Yorker from the Bronx, all the attitude, I'm like, what happened, miss? She's like, I was just wondering if maybe you could help me, give me a couple dollars so that I can go buy some milk for my baby. And I'm like, all right, well, you got to walk with me over here because, as you can see, I got a handful of stuff and I need to go in my wallet. And I'm looking at her. She looks fairly well dressed. She's clean. She's got on a pair of decent sneakers. She just looks like any other mom in the Bronx. And I'm thinking to myself, what would the amount of pride you have to swallow to ask someone for money to feed your baby? And I said to her at one point, now, I live in a very rough area of the Bronx, the Melrose Morrisania. Morrisania has the highest concentration of the biggest projects in New York City. Back in the day when they were still building projects, 25 stories. Nobody does that anymore because we know that that's problematic for a myriad of reasons. But those buildings are still here, and all of the shit that comes along with those buildings is still here. The corner boys hate me. I already got into shit with the corner boys. I walk my community very nervous. I know that at any moment, shit could pop off. So I'm nervous about giving this lady some money, but something in my spirit, my Ori just said, give this lady some money. So I have her hold my coffees, because I got hot chocolate for my kids, my coffee. I open up my wallet. I've got 3 20s and a dollar bill. What do I give this lady who wants money for her baby? I give her the whole 20. And so this lady says to me, something about your spirit tells me that either you're a social worker, you work in the community doing something, or you just take care of people, but I feel it. And I said to her, and so all of a sudden she starts running off all of this stuff that she needs. Now, I say to her, text me and give me a couple days. If you don't hear from me in a couple days because I get busy, miss, and I'm going to forget about you, hit me up again. I don't know the answer to all of your questions right now, but I know that I know people who can help you. And I am making the commitment to this $20 to also handhold you through this. I will make phone calls on your behalf, but you got to make me 2 promises. If I handhold you, you're going to show, I said it to her just like this, your ass is going to show up. And I gave you this $20 and your ass is going to go buy milk for your baby, right? And she said, yes, miss, I'm going to do that. And for me, I tell y'all this story to say, for me, that is the model. Give motherfuckers what they need in that moment, right? Because I could have said to myself, oh, she ain't going to get no milk. Or I could have said to her, and it occurred to me, miss, I'll walk with you to the grocery store and I'll buy the milk for you. You know what I'm saying? All of the kind of ways that when we give people, particularly poor people, something, we want to babysit them. That woman got that money and went and got high. I don't know, in that moment, that for me, I wasn't rooted in the worst possible outcome. I was rooted in the best possible outcome. Forget about whether or not if she took that money, because the corner boys were standing across the street and they saw me and they were giggling. So maybe she is a fiend, and maybe she is going to take that $20 and turn around and go back to them and buy drugs. But in that moment, I know that she's not going to do anything to put herself in danger to get that high. People need what they need whenever they need it. Right? And so if we're going to help people, for me, give people what they need first. And then, yes, I know we also still got to use the system. So now, miss, that we've taken care of your immediate needs, how can we figure out this system that we want to dismantle and build something else that we're at the forefront of that treats us with integrity and dignity? Because these social service and safety nets really do rob people, particularly Black women and their children, of dignity, particularly queer folks of their dignity, particularly trans people half the time don't even go in there because they experience so much violence in those systems, being dead named, not being able to recognize as their, I don't even like using the term preferred gender, but let's use it because that's all we got right now, their preferred gender or their true gender. So we have to figure out, yes, how do we subvert these systems by giving people what they need? This is what my organization is trying to do. This is what organizations like BX Rebirth are trying to do. This is what organizations like the Okra Project are trying to do. Yep. And how do we also subvert the systems, but also understand that we have a right to hold these systems accountable. When folks talk about, oh, poor folks want free shit, yeah, we do. I stopped trying to justify the folks, that poor people work harder. If we are talking about poor Black people, you should get all the free shit. You should get all the free shit because this whole system that is around you was built on the literal lifeblood and sweat and tears of your ancestors, and this country has not paid you what they owe you. So yes, give me the free shit. Give me the free food. Give me the free education. Give me the free housing. And if you happen to turn around and say socialism like it's a dirty word, don't bother me none. Because rich white men be getting all kinds of breaks, corporate welfare, and stolen labor since the beginning of the creation of this country.
There's that. Yeah.
That's that.
I would love if you talk a little bit, because I think I feel like I first sort of encountered you sort of in this, you were doing this work and it felt super, I mean, it still feels grassroots, but there was this really particular way. I think what I'm gonna get at is, you have to feel hopeful, because I think that to continue the work you do, there's got to be some degree of hopefulness in it, right? Like you have the success stories, you have the sort of markers that kind of keep you filled up and sort of keep you motivated to do the work you do. But I guess I'm wondering about the nonprofit landscape. I've been talking to folks like Shakira Simley, been talking to folks like Tanya, Karen Washington, and sort of, and also we talked to week before last, Kiana Mickey, and they talk a lot about how these frameworks of the nonprofit space don't necessarily fit the work that you really want to do. Like, you kind of have to use them because it's like you said, the models that we have or the sort of spaces that we have. But I'm wondering about the posture of nonprofit work, because it feels like the most clear access point for folks who want to do mission-based work. But Kiana talked specifically about sort of shifting the way you consider the nonprofit space. And I'm wondering, because your work is housed under a couple of projects, and I wonder if you think that all about what, like, if all things were equal and the models didn't exist and you were rebuilding one, what would it look like? Like, what would funding look like? What would the sort of framework look like? Because going forward, it just feels like we got to do something different in the way we engage the food space specifically, but the way we look for and sort of house this really transformational work. But it doesn't feel sustainable. Like, I watch people. I mean, I think about all of the emotional, all of the physical labor you put into trying to do this work on behalf of other people, but the model's got to shift, right? And I wonder what that would look like if it was most idealized.
So I think there's a couple things. One, you have to recognize, what is it, sweetie? Give me 1 second, y'all. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. No. I'm sorry.
What? Here. Take it in the room. Take it in the room. Okay. Go ahead and go in there. Thank you. So there's a couple things. One, nonprofits are businesses, right? And the tax exemption is really just about that. So 501c3s were created really for rich folks. It has very little to do with mission-based work. It was very much a tax code that was created for rich folks and what they wanted to do with their money in a way that they could then get a tax exemption, right? So it's recognizing that and recognizing it for what it is, right? It's just another way of running a business. what your mission's going to be and how you do that work in compliance to that tax code is really up to you, right? Number two, we also have to realize that a lot of these industrial systems, they're tools, but they are not going to save us, right? I'm never going to tell people that, you know, your ancestors died for you to vote. No, your ancestors died because white people killed them. That's number one. Or the stress of being Black in America killed them, or the transatlantic slave trade killed them, or an unequal food system that they were brutalized in, like sugar cane, that killed them. They did not die for your right to vote. So let's look at that, number one. But if you feel so compelled that the legacy of the ways in which we fought to vote compels you to vote, then do that. But know that voting won't save you. I say all that to say that voting won't save you. A nonprofit is not going to dismantle systems because it is an active piece of that system. And so the unique quagmire that Black folks find themselves in doing this work is that you are trying to, as you said before, subvert systems while also realizing that you are caught up in that very same system. And so I don't have an easy answer for that. What I tell my staff and what I tell other folks is that we're going to get this bag. We're going to take this money that rich white folks gave us. I don't equivocate on where the money came from. I have some folks that run nonprofits and they're like, we don't take corporate money. Why? Because that foundation money you getting is corporate money. Where y'all think this money come from? A lot of that stuff is about rippling out, and it's like drug dealers, how they wash money. So you got some money from selling coke, and you took that money and you opened up a barbershop, and you take any other money and put it in the barbershop and you wash that money. It doesn't stop where that money originated from. So if I got money from Kresge Foundation or Novo Foundation or whatever, the reality is the vast majority of that money came from some corporate entity somewhere and just kind of got watered down and washed through an endowment or family foundation or whatever else. So for me, give me the money. Give me the money, and then I'm going to fill out all of the forms you need me to fill out. I'm going to take the metrics. I'm going to do the bank reconciliations. But really at the core of it is, how can I use this money to make the immediate needs of my community to meet them? So I do mutual aid. That $20, that $20 I gave that lady for milk, the way I looked at that's mutual aid. The corner boy standing across the street could not believe that I gave that lady $20. It's a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket. It took me 11 years to build my organization literally from the ground up as a mother of two at the time, putting myself through school, living completely on welfare. And it took me 11 years to get to an operating budget of about $310,000. Now everyone says, good for you, Tanya. I'm so proud of you.
No.
For me, I say $310,000 is nothing. It is nothing.
For the work that you're trying to do. Yeah.
And so there's a sacrifice that's made somewhere. And, you know, often I hear from Black women, and it's a competing school of thought, and depending on the day that you catch me, some days it's like, I'm not doing anything for anybody until my cup runneth over. And I get that. If I still got to use a voucher to pay my rent, and I still have to use SNAP benefits to feed my 6 kids, some folks are like, well, you ain't got no business out here giving money to other Black women. But what I recognize is that I am in a tremendous place of privilege in comparison to my neighbors, to the people that I walk over, and I can tell their immediate needs are literally not being met, right? So for me to be able to have some social capital, for me to be able to have educational capital, for me to be able to have some professional capital, to have access to $310,000 so that I can give a young Black woman in Detroit $600 to get her car fixed, or so that I can put $10,000 into our farm so that we can house mothers and their children during a pandemic where there's very few safe green spaces, so that I can put $50,000 into a food box where we give out food to the community basically for free every Friday, and we ask for donations and don't nobody give us $1. Like, that to me is go in the room, please. That is a tremendous amount of privilege as far as I'm concerned. Some of my neighbors would literally kill me. Do you understand what I'm saying? They would run up that old lock song, run up in the house, put the gun up in your mouth, get the money out the couch. I live around folks that would literally do that to me to get a hold of my bank card to be able to have access to those funds. So I recognize the privilege that I have in regards to my neighbors, but I also recognize how little to no privilege I have in comparison to a lot of these folks out here running giant corporate nonprofits, to able-bodied white men like the one who told me that the food that I was growing wasn't nothing, gave me $50,000 at the end of that without blinking, and who asked me to bring my staff in so to trot out in front of everybody so he could feel good about the $50,000 that he gave us.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Because there's so much in that I'm like internally amening. The comments are going off. People are, yes. There's something in that it's been resonating with me for a couple years now, but especially over the course of doing these conversations. You brought up this framework of mutual aid, and I feel like places like New Orleans, people like these spaces understand mutual aid and the power of mutual aid, and they feel like it's so inherent in Black and Brown communities. And I wonder why we don't sort of subscribe to those models more often. But for those of you who, maybe if you aren't familiar with what mutual aid societies look like or what the framework of those societies look like, talk a little bit about mutual aid, because it's so, I think it asks people to come to the table in ways that it's a democratization of resources, right? It's a sort of, just talk a little bit about it, because it's such a dope idea and it's something that's so inherent. So like it's no brainer, I think.
Yeah, for some of us, but so many of us have also internalized respectability politics that we regurgitate out of the lies of capitalism. And I think that speaks to your idea of why we don't lean into those models more, because a lot of us just think that we are millionaires who are having a rough time right now. A lot of us you work really hard and you're smarter and more diligent than the next person, and you too can become the next Jeff Bezos, the next Oprah Winfrey, the next Russell Simmons, or any of those things. Not realizing that even Black folks at the head of capitalism, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. So even Black folks who are at the head of many of those capitalist, love stories that I like to call them, that Black folks will tell one another, this is the first Black millionaire. That doesn't impress me. Okay, that's great. That's nice. But if it took for us to be ruthless and violent in the quest to get that, then that's a problem. But to lean into this assertion that you're making, that we've always done mutual aid. I say mutual aid and I use it in a sort of colloquial term, but mutual aid, I think, is getting that the word has been used so often that the actual etymology, the origin of the word, has gotten screwed up. For a lot of us, we say mutual aid and we just mean that we got access to some money and I'm going to give the money to you. That's important. Getting direct, and you're seeing a lot of that digitally. Black women, there's a whole community of Black women now who are leading these sort of kind of mutual aid sort of ciphers on the internet, where you can go, and if you about to get put out, your car need to be fixed, and so on and so forth, they will use their visibility to raise the funds for you to get those things done. I'm actually going to say that's not mutual aid. We say it's mutual aid, but it's not really mutual aid. Mutual aid is more about what you're talking about. How do we create communities that we then have access to resources that we will then use for one another, right? So if the young lady's car needed to be fixed, I can call up my homie who is a mechanic, who will then make sure that her car gets fixed, and then will say to me that he's got a family that needs food, and I'm gonna make sure he gets 10 boxes of food for the folks that are in his cipher that need access to food. That's actually mutual aid, right? And that is about a redistribution and reorganizing in a non-hierarchical way of the resources that we have. Here's the issue. In many of our communities, we don't own shit. We don't have access to the means of production. We don't have access to the distribution. You hear that euphemism, that adage that if you give a man a fish, he eats for the day. If you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. That's bullshit too. If you give a man a fish, he'll eat for the day. If you teach a man to fish, he still may only eat for the day, because if he doesn't have access to if he can't own the boat, if he can't get access to the water, if he don't have a place to process the fish, if he can't get to the market to sell the fish, if he doesn't have the proper housing to cook the fish when he gets home, all you did was teach a motherfucker how to fish. You didn't necessarily change his life. So we have to think about the ways in which we get to utilize the skills that we are amassing. All of us are pushing our kids into STEM, into STEAM, but are those kids going to have access to all of the different resources and capital that come along in Silicon Valley so they can use these skills? And right now the answer is no. So they'll learn STEAM and they'll learn STEM, and then they'll go and they'll be in the same type of oppressive hierarchy to use those skills, and they will still suffer many of the isms that we suffer in those spaces because of the inherent racism. We see it right here on these platforms, how Black folks are policed more on Facebook. They're policed more on Instagram. They're probably about to cut our Black asses off right now. I'm on here talking.
Yeah, you 1,000,000% right. But I guess the thing I'm always impacted by your work is that even knowing all of this, even like your work is wildly historical, wildly accurate in terms of like your view of the landscape and the marketplace, and sort of seeing how you can kind of, but it carries on, because I think that's the thing, right? So many people will just find themselves in I think maybe because I'm not gonna put this on you, but is it because your work is so central to your own life? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's personal. It's personal for you in a way that sometimes I think, I don't know, there's this way in which you think about loving on Black women and having that be so central, because it's your life. It's not just something. It's not just it's calling, but it's how you. I don't know. It just feels like it feels like you sharing you and your life with your community, but really with the world. And I hope that people see it as a model, because I think that disparity should be personal for everybody. Like it should take you living in circumstances to feel like this work is personal, but that level of investment in terms of like your personal well-being is sort of a extra layer, maybe. I don't know. There's something about it is always wildly attractive to me. But I pray for you a lot, and I think a lot about what it takes to sort of carry on, because it can't be easy. It can't be. I just the stress of it, man. My own nerve.
I know, funny. They be afraid. Somebody jumped on a live the other day and told me I smoke too much weed. I was like, first of all, man, I eat my weed. That's number one. And and number two, I'm Black. I'm a dark-skinned, big Black woman living through a pandemic. Ain't no smoking too much weed. Y'all better be glad that I'm not on crack or in the bottom of a bottle, because that's what gets a lot of us, right? And I understand that, right? And I hold space for that. And yeah, I say all that to say that my nerves absolutely do be frayed. And depending on the day of the week that you catch me, there are definitely times where I do feel a little bit regretful, where I do feel like I should have engaged in respectability politics. I should have been the best version of code switching. I should have not had all of these kids and never got married with terrible men to have them by, and who don't provide the support. And I had all of the tools at my fingertips to be a successful person in the ways in which we think of success for Black people, in the respectable way. And I think for me, for a long time, I struggled with the fact that I knew that my family thought that. Even to this day, I have family. It gets back to me that I have extended family members who don't know I graduated college, don't know a goddamn thing about what I do on a day-to-day basis, don't know none of this shit. But they know every time I had a child, they know when I had corona. They still look at me as Tanya, the one who had the potential but fucked up and had all these babies. I'm at peace with that now. I was talking to a priestess online, just not getting any protection work or any spiritual work done. She was just a mutual friend of mine. And I was talking about how I really needed to take my own spiritual journey more seriously, how my Ori, my spirit, that's what we call it, the Ori, the thing that leads you, your intuition, was saying to me, it's time for me to do the research, do the work, and become an actual practitioner. And I really need to think about what spiritual house speaks to me. Is it hoodoo? Is it voodoo? Is it Ifa? Whatever. And I remember one of the priestesses said, all right, little sis, you're getting a little ahead of yourself, because literally the work that you are doing, that is your spiritual work. And it literally, we weren't face to face, it was online, but it stopped me in my tracks. And even now speaking about it, it brings me to tears, because I do feel like, had I not gone through all of the things that I had gone through, I come from a great family. Do we know struggle? Absolutely. But I know both my parents. I have a very good relationship with most of the folks in my extended family, as much as a relationship as I want to have. I'm a Virgo, so you know our default setting is shady and distant. But all things considered, I have, like, I'm not beefing with nobody. Do I feel like the black sheep sometimes? Yeah, maybe. But the point is, I come from a good family. I went to decent schools. I didn't grow up in abject poverty. My mother didn't sell me while she was on drugs. My father wasn't an absentee father. All of these things that we hear about as tropes for the deficiency of blackness. That's not my narrative. You know what I'm saying? But I went through all of these things anyway. And I think that I went through them because had I not had those experiences, then I would have been one of these respectable pick-me's. I would have been a person who punched down, who talked about, oh, I went to school, I got a job, I wish I could get some food stamps so I could go buy lobster. Because sis buying lobster on her food stamps ain't going to be able to eat for the rest of the month. Please understand that. Even if she didn't buy lobster, most food stamps will not allow for you to eat for the full amount of the month. It's called EBT, which in the hood we coined eat better today, because you don't know how you're going to eat tomorrow. Right? And so I feel like I went through those things so that I could be intimately informed of all of the nuances, all of the different things that go into making personal decisions, because the personal is political and none of us make decisions in a vacuum. You can only make the decisions given the best of the circumstances that you have. And some of us ain't got very good circumstances. If I, as someone who came from a two-parent home with great support from grandmothers on both sides, decent relationships with my extended family, living in struggling communities, but not like I didn't grow up in like the wire. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I wasn't bang, none of that type of shit. And I still got caught up in these trappings. What happens to those of us who live at the margins of the margins of the margins? And I think that I have the unique ability to be a translator. I think that I had those experiences because I have the ability to be in certain rooms where when other black folks, because that's really all I care about. That's all I care about. Let's be clear. I ain't trying to convince white people of shit. I don't give a fuck how white people view me. I am not trying to convince white folks of my humanity. I am so beyond all of that. I am only speaking to black people because I want to see black people gain a level of self-sufficiency that is not this weird-ass right-wing conservative way that self-sufficiency and bootstrapping, the myth of bootstrapping is used.
Oh my God.
Yes, that speaks to our West African roots and heritage, our Caribbean roots and heritage, the ways in which we modeled in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, where we were so successful and white folks came in and literally burned our motherfucking communities down, right? I want for us to think about the ways in which we actualize that. And part of that has to be that we have to let go of this idea that many of the situations that we see in our communities are a function of just poor family planning and decision making. Don't get me wrong, there's certainly that. I definitely have made some decisions in my life where I'm like, girl, right? But it was not in the absence of other things that were rooted in systemic oppression. So how do we get the language to recognize these things? How do we create an analysis and a pedagogy, right, around collective healing. And then how do we move forward to strengthen our families and our communities so that we can have the healthy village that we know that we are fully capable of creating? I hear so many of us say that we are not, and it is ahistorical as fuck because we've done it. Right? So how do we get back to doing that? And that means that we need to have some really hard intra-communal conversations that are, like I said, hard, right? That are layered, that are nuanced, but that are rooted in real love for one another. And right now, I think a lot of Black folks don't love themselves, so it makes it very difficult for us to love each other.
Yes. Preach, 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 preach. Oh my God, we have been blessed to have Tanya Feilds with us for the last 45 minutes. I want to make sure y'all have been going off in the comments, but if you have any direct questions, I want to be respectful of Tanya's time, and we can kind of, you drop them either in the comments or in the question section. I would love it if we could finish off, or sort of circle back around to Mama Tanya's kitchen, because it feels like that's sort of your palate cleanser, sort of your respite. This kind of space that you have to sort of be fully joyful and I don't know, just this kind of culinary space that sort of allows you to have those kind of, you use the word lifestyle, but this idea about, just joyfulness. And I think it's a really beautiful concept. I love it, and it's conceived because it asks folks to sort of use their kitchen as this really interesting sort of self-care battleground. So just, I would love if you could talk a little bit about the framework of Mama Tanya's kitchen and
so Mama
what that feels like.
Mama Tanya's kitchen came as a result of fast food and a snap. So we used to have this big school bus. Everybody in the hood used to call me the magic school bus lady. We had the school bus that was fitted with solar panels. I would drive up in front of McDonald's on 138th Street and Brook Avenue, and we would give away food or sell food, donation prices only. I'd hook in a hot plate to the outlets on the buses. The solar panels gave us power. I would hook in the outlets, put up a Ninja, put up a hot plate, and I would do these cooking demos. And I would do cooking demos that were rooted in, if you can only use your grocery store, right? Whatever is in our shitty ass grocery stores. If you are on a SNAP budget, right? So that's where the double entendre of SNAP came from, a SNAP budget, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and SNAP, in terms of the fact that I know a lot of folks in our community don't have a lot of time and cannot be creating these decadent ass meals that we see sometimes online and on television. And people love them so much that folks started saying to me, you should do these other places. People would pay me to bring the bus and do these like renegade curbside cooking demos. And then folks are saying you should take these and repost them online. And what I started to realize is, because I was watching the Food Network, I do watch like Tasty, BuzzFeed's Tasty, and I'm one of those fools who pay for subscriptions to Bon Appetit, to America's Test Kitchen, all of that stuff. I buy lots and lots of cookbooks. If a Black person put out a cookbook, I don't give a shit if it's good or bad. I will buy it. And then I started saying, I don't see us in these lifestyle spaces, right? And I don't see us in these lifestyle spaces talking about real shit. So I'm watching a pioneer woman on her homestead in Montana in a big ass kitchen with an island with her beautiful kitchen workflow, right? And I'm like, right? And like you said, it's all aspirational. And you really helped me really like commit to Mama Tanya's kitchen and to making it a thing, right? Because you were like, girl, all that shit is fiction. Like, that's not real. So do with you and make your space. Don't wait for anybody to come in and welcome you in, because it's not going to happen, right? Just make the space that you think needs to be made. And if it speaks to people, they will show up. And so that's what I started doing, right? Like, I haven't posted to Mama Tanya's kitchen in about a month because I've been going through renovation. My boyfriend is a filmmaker. He works for Deezer Samiro. We've leveled up all of our equipment, sound equipment, and production equipment. I'll take y'all on a little journey with me. Y'all
we want to see.
Because my kitchen's looking terrible right now. But I've started to, like, this is what my kitchen looks like. Okay, I got a railroad kitchen and a pre-war. So I started doing things like got this offline
Yes.
for
Go
$40.
up. That's right.
Use the coupon because I knew I needed better workflow, right? In the lifestyle area, nobody would ever mention roaches. But if I'm trying to appeal to a certain brand, I'm going to tell it like it is. Niggas in New York in certain urban areas got roaches, okay? I live in a pre-war building with some nasty neighbors. I be having to do things in my kitchen that steals me against making sure them little critters don't come into my apartment, right? That's some of the stuff that I want to talk about. I want to talk
Yeah.
about how do we make sure that our kitchens are safe and hygienic and do so without this respectability, politics, and shame. And quiet is kept. Some of these white folks in urban areas, they got roaches too. Okay? Went
Yep.
out to IKEA, got me a whole new workbench, pulled them cabinets
Yes. Butcher
out.
block.
Yep. Right? So you got the butcher block on top, stainless steel on the bottom. Because my landlord and his cheap ass put in these cheap composite wood type cabinets, breaking away a roach magnet. Mama Tanya don't do roaches, honey. I don't do the roaches. Okay. My bacon racks. I talk about organization, the ways in which we need to get organized, the ways that we can use whatever. Like I said, I'm not a giant fan of Amazon, but Amazon is really only probably the only one right now taking EBT online. And so EBT online allows me to use my EBT to go get things like coconut flour, because we know in poor communities, we have our children who are suffering from gluten allergies, may not even know to go get tested for celiacs. And that kind of stuff is not being talked about. It is being looked at as, as something for affluent white folks that they do, with in terms of all of the weird shit they do around food. I got my
Yeah.
food, bringing in my West African cooking. This is,
That's
and so
right.
I started talking about that, the ways in which we use, our legacy and historical food pathways to speak to our health. A lot of times when we look at the health genre, it is very bland. It is very homogenized. They're not talking about the ways in which West Africans and folks of West African descent been using tomatoes, been using roots, been using sweet potatoes, and all of these things that speak to us, that maybe we wouldn't have a lot of these things, these ailments.
Healthy. Yeah.
Because genetically, we are not predispositioned to be doing things like drinking cow's milk and so on and so forth. We just added this this behemoth of a baker's rack to put all of my mini
Gorgeous.
appliances on. They're not up there now. They're in the hallway because we've been renovating. I have a fancy fridge. This for me was, I have arrived. Do you understand what I'm saying? When I got a fridge that pinged, that could tell, like, where I could get water out of there, or get ice, okay? I knew I had arrived. And I had to save 4 years to get this refrigerator, but I got it. Then we have a deep freezer because I have 6 children. So I talk a lot about that, right? And I also talk a lot about what are the things that we can skimp on and what are the things we don't skimp on. I am a big proponent of stainless steel, and you know this as a chef, Therese, stainless steel in your kitchen. Particularly if you live in an urban area where you are concerned about things like roaches and even ants and things I love wood, but wood in your kitchen, I try to stay away from as much as possible. I talk about natural ways to do pesticides and so on in your kitchen. Listen, cloves are your best friend. Peppermint oil is your best friend. Orange essential oil is your best friend. Smells great to you. Mice, roaches, ants, they hate it. Different types of critters, they hate it. Which appliances you want to skimp on, which ones you want to spend a little coin on. Okay?
That's right.
The Ninja Foodie, the air fryer, the best thing I've bought in a very long time. And I buy lots and lots of kitchen appliances. So I'm waiting to get the paint job done. I am trying to decide. We're putting in a new sink. The landlord gave me the okay to put in the new sink, so long as I pay for it myself. He'll pay to install it. I don't even want him to. I'm just going to pay for it all together. And let me tell you how petty I am. When I move out of here, I'm going to rip that motherfucker out and take it with me. I don't care.
And put his old one. That's right. That's right.
Storage. I won't leave it here for him. I'm deciding whether or not I want to buy another stove, appropriate range top. 6 burner with 2 warmers. But in any event, we just make and do what we got. And so that's what Mama Tanya's kitchen is about. It's about, even if you're working with the basics, you ain't got to be basic. How do we take what we have? Because our grandmothers and aunties and grandpappies, they've been making $1 out of 15 cents for a long time. And how can we do the
Yes.
way that doesn't stress us, that restores our kitchen as a place of wellness, overall wellness, right? Not just for food, but also how do we take the stigma off of domesticity? So many of us have grown
Yeah.
up in households where domesticity became oppressive. Our grandmothers and great grandmothers and so on worked in somebody's kitchen. And then by the time you get home, by the time she get home, she ain't got nothing left for y'all. You know what I'm saying? She
Yep.
tired. I'll eat pizza. I mean, that's a reality even now for my family. I work
That's
12,
right.
13, 14 hours a day. If I don't get in the kitchen on Sunday and create 5 meals, we grub hubbing it all week. So how do we think about ways in which to use realistic, culturally relevant meal prep and our resources to create meals of that place our wellness at the center? And to me, that is also like that is about a radical mind frame of restoring, because that's Toni Morrison said that, right? She talks about the ways in which racism and so on steals all of these things from us, becomes a distraction.
Yes.
And so that's also the thing that white supremacy does. It distracts us. It takes these things from us. And so then we aren't seeing wellness in our bodies from simple things, not being able to actually create holistic meals for ourselves, not having the time to
Yep.
go food shopping appropriately, being too tired to actually cook yourself a meal on a stovetop instead of sticking it in a microwave. None of which I
Exactly.
frown on, but just giving people, and then doing it in a way that's not ham-handed. Doing it in a way that isn't, because sometimes, listen, I'm not trying to come for nobody, but sometimes it get a little too, it can get a little too crunchy, and you
A little
lose folk.
bit.
It, it,
Yeah.
it, it can get a little too onkish. It can get a little too waist beady. It can get a
Yeah.
little too white sage and Palo Alto-ish. I mean, so we Santo Paulo, I mean, so we want to do it in a way that's realistic and that also assumes makes no assumptions about anybody's lifestyle.
Yes. Yes. I want to leave room so we can make sure we gave people all the ways they can get in contact with you to support the work you're doing. I know you just had your September was it, September was 30 50K in 30 days. So you have
Yes,
these ways of
thank you.
sort of trying to get folks to help fund your work.
Mhm.
But just give people all of the ways. I mean, you on multiple socials, but I want to make sure people have the ways to
So
contact
all my
and get
business
in contact.
streets, not all of it, but a lot of it, even some of the stuff I don't want. But people can find me on IG and Facebook, Mama Tanya's Kitchen, MAMA, Tanya's, TANYA Kitchen, right? You can find me on Facebook under Tanya Denise Feilds. I rarely, if ever, accept friend requests there, but you can follow me there. Um, you can find my organization on IG and Facebook, the Black Feminist Project. I don't keep the social media over there. I have a beautiful, wonderful person named Tindahi. They them pronouns, they them, they're non-gender conforming. And they do an amazing job responding back to stuff. So even if you wanted to connect with me through the Black Feminist Project, you're better off going through the DMs on the Black Feminist Project because they actually respond to them in a timely fashion and get back to folks, make sure I actually see stuff. So you are more than free. And our 50K in 30-day campaign ended, but our fundraising did not.
Yep.
We are opening up a storefront. I'm actually going to see a second site. I am manifesting that we will have closed on a site by November 15th. For the Alice Fields Community Center for Black women, girls, and marginalized genders. All of those things that I talk about, direct services, referrals, mutual aid, diaper, and child care product distribution will be done out of there. And we are building a small commercial kitchen and food retail space as well. So we bring in some of that bougie blackness to the community, and we gonna let motherfuckers use their EBT to buy it.
That's
So you
right.
can come
That's
in
right.
where to the Alice Fields Community Center and you can buy coconut flour on your snap.
That's right. That's right. Oh, I love you so much, Tanya. I appreciate your time. I know an hour is a lot of commitment for you, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Yeah, man, y'all. As a matter of fact, like I feel like sometimes in the comments people say like, "How can we get in contact?" All you need to do is Google Tanya Feilds, and you will not only be able to see her. I mean, her work has been so long-standing and prolific, and you will get your life just hearing her speak and deep diving into how long-standing and sort of entrenched her work has been. Follow her on all the socials we've mentioned. You can certainly reach out to her personally, but just get into her work and see the models that she's using because they are so brilliant. And certainly, if you have the coins and the dollars, absolutely go over and donate in support of this really beautiful
That's
work.
right. That old song back in the day, give me $20. Give me $20. You give,
Absolutely.
and you're not giving it to me. You're giving it to black women and their children, queer black folks who need safe spaces, especially places like the Bronx.
Yes.
Like this morning I walked up on a trans black woman who clearly was in distress, underdressed out in the cold, on crutches, being actively harassed by other people in our community. I want sis to be able to roll up in our space, get the appropriate clothing that she needs, take a load off if she needs, put in a voucher for some mutual aid so we could put $50 or $100 in her hand and just feel safe.
Amen. 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 Amen.
And I love you. Thank you so much. We always
Absolutely.
time when we get together.
I know it. I know it. But I appreciate you, and I will be in touch soon. But thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Therese. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate y'all.
Awesome. Oh, that was so good. Thank y'all for paying attention. I've been Trace Nelson. I'm repping Black Food Folks. So you can go over to Black Food Folks account and check out all the cool things we have going on. Conversations almost daily, but definitely multiple times during the week. This collaboration has been so dope. But please follow Tanya. All the places that you can follow her and the work she does is so brilliant. Also, next week, I'm going to be talking with the very brilliant young woman, Haley Thomas. She's been a food activist for almost as long as Tanya and I have been in these spaces, and she's 19 with a new book out, and it's just brilliant. So I'm really excited to talk with her next week. But thank y'all, and I will post this so y'all can repost and share and revisit this conversation because it was so dope. But Tanya is brilliant. Thank y'all.